Let's begin with Genesis 2:18, where God said, "It is not good for a man to be alone." God created us to be in a relationship with other people, not just in proximity of other people. Now, there's a whole lot of people like that in your life. I get that. But there needs to be, we were created to have an inner core of deep, meaningful relationships. And the tragedy of our day is so many people don't even know what we're talking about anymore. So many relationships, even those called family and marriage, can be extremely shallow. And so we come together as a church family to learn some of these things. And one of the things we learn is how to consider to stimulate one another to love and good works. And we're going to explore that aspect of being a church family. So we start with love, of course. We love God with all our heart, with all our soul, all our mind. And then the second great command is to love your neighbor as yourself. We were created to give love. If we were created in the image of God, and God is love, 1 John 4:9, then we were created to give love. Now, Acts 20:35 says it's more blessed to give than receive. That doesn't say you were created to love, but we were created to give. That's one of those secret keys to life that a lot of people don't. They're just afraid to go there. So I looked up just this week before my computer crashed and found that 52% of Americans report feeling lonely. I thought, wow, that's kind of sad. There are 320 million people in America. Seems like there ought to be enough folks to go around, huh? 47% report relationships that are not meaningful. They've got acquaintances, they're around folks, but they don't have the meaning, and that's sad. That leads to a pretty empty life. So what we want to do is learn how to love our neighbor as ourselves. But one of the things we have to do is learn to love ourselves, because you've heard me say it many times, and I think it's a really good statement to learn. Hurt people hurt people. You see somebody acting the fool. Okay, number one, you're probably right. They're acting the fool. Well, number two, they have some inner pains and wounds they have not addressed. Because people who are happy within themselves, at peace within themselves, and experience the peace that passes understanding, Philippians 4:7, and the love of God and all the wonderful things we sing about, they don't go around hurting other people. They're a blessing in the life of other people. You know somebody that's a bully and does mean things, they're hurt. They're a wounded person, and they don't know what to do, so they just lash out at other people. We learn to love ourselves because it is very true that you can't give away what you don't have. If you don't really have self-respect and self-acceptance, it's really, really hard to give a deep, sincere feeling of that away. So a lot of people just dabble in relationships. They're in proximity of folks. They're in the area where other folks are. But to say they really have a deep, heartfelt connection where they have those, and I'm just going to say a core group where they can open their heart to and be honest and just put it all on the table, it's not there because of their own self-rejection. And if you've never learned to accept yourself and you're rejecting yourself, you're scared to death that somebody's going to see that really ugly, horrible reality that you imagine's in yourself. And the moment they see what you believe's in yourself, they're going to run the other way as fast as they can. So why would you dare open that up? And so people sit in that mediocre place. Now, they survive, but that's not the place to live. So a lot of folks never learn how to love themselves first. And so they stay trapped. And they're long ago past whatever that is, and that's much more common than we would think. And like I say, they survive. They're going to live to be 70, 80, 90, 100 years old. But they're never going to know what it is to thrive, to really feel like they're riding the top of the wave and have mastered some of the joys of life. So, what's healthy love look like? Well, it encourages people to grow. You get behind people and you support them. You're there for them and their victory. It's about the song, the wind beneath your wings, and you find delight in being that wind. It's not just selfishness. It is really sincere delight in the success of others, and some people have trouble with that. So you'd think most parents would have that one down really solid. That's my kid, or that's my grandkid. Absolutely, you should have that one down solid. But I think we all know stories where the parents don't, and their kid's never good enough, and they're always in competition with their kid, and they're always pointing out what their kid could have done better. Sure, you got all A's on the report card, but you could have had A pluses. Isn't that crazy? But that kind of thing happens. No, we're talking about a sincere delight in the success of others. Somebody said, do you have just a few friends that you could call when something goes wrong and says, look, this, and this is going on in my life, and I really need your prayers. I really need, just your moral support. And most people, well, yeah, I've got some folks in my life like that. Okay. Next question is, do you have a few people, just one or two, where you have something good happen in your life? You can call this person and say, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. And they are truly happy for you. They don't go, oh, yeah, that's pretty good, but let me tell you what happened to me. And they don't start picking it apart, but they truly celebrate with you. Romans 12:15. What do? We rejoice with those who rejoice. How many of those folks do you have in your life? And if you can start counting more than one, you're doing really good. So Matthew 20:28, it's this attitude of learning to serve other people. I'm going to say primarily in non-physical ways. Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many. And we're going to imitate Christ, and we're going to go that same direction. So we're going to understand God's design. And it's just flip-flop opposite of what the world does. The world says, me, go get it, get it, get it. People need to give you this, this, and this. And God says, forget it. I want you to give, because it's more blessed to give than receive. I want you to learn to serve, not be served. I want you to take the initiative and show love. You go out and you sow the seed. And don't just toss out a few crumbs like some folks do. Have you had that ornery coworker where you're being trained for a new position or something, and the ornery coworker just keeps tossing you out some crumbs or manipulate you outright and is really telling you how great and how wonderful you are, and we're going to get you on this job so I can go sit in the break room and twiddle my thumbs while you're out on the floor working 8 hours a shift. Sounded kind of good though, didn't it? I got all these compliments, got all these praise, threw all these crumbs my way. Turns out they never celebrated our success. They only manipulated us so they could go sit in the break room and drink coffee and eat Cinnabons or whatever's in the break room. We're going to love as God loves. We're going to give love. And we're going to learn to love to give love. And that's it. I don't know what to call it, sweet spot, because that's what God does. We're going to embrace the challenge because we are going to have to make our flesh our slave, like Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9:27. And we're going to take the joy of giving as our only payment. Whoa. And that's what? Now, this is a big challenge. You probably have to volunteer somewhere to do this. But find some people you can help, and they have no way they can help you back. The best they can do is say, thank you, appreciate you. That's the biggest repayment you're going to get. If you can find that place and you can learn to take the joy of giving. I gave. That's what I came here to give. Then you're going to be somewhere. And so we're going to practice love, which is a verb. I love that. Had a book years ago, lost it in a move, but love's a verb. It's something you go out and do. That's good. So in action, truly I say to you, the extent that you did it to one of these, the least of these, my brothers or sisters of mine, you did it for me. And then he flips it over and said, to the extent you did not do it for one of the least of these, you did not do it to me. God takes how we treat each other personal. Now, I don't think that's hard to understand, because if I go to my little next there, we're parents. If you're a parent, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a grandparent, you know what I'm talking about. I can pick on my grandbabies, but you better not too much, right? I can pick on my kids, but you better not too much. You get it? Well, we're all God's children. And if I get to picking on somebody too much, God takes it personal, because that's his baby I'm picking on. And it works the other way around too, which is kind of a neat idea. I really want you to think more than just physical needs. It's too easy. I had a very brief conversation between class and sermon. Uh, I made the statement, it's just too easy to throw some money at something and walk away and go, well, I did something great. I threw some money at it. There are people that do need money. I get that. And you make your judgment on who you give your money to. I'm very cautious there because I think there's just too much of throwing money and walking away. What a lot of people need is attention. They need some time. They need some connection. They're lonely, and I don't care how much money you throw at the lonely, money is not going to fill up the lonely place. They've been kicked to the curb. Society already kicked them out, and they just don't feel like they're involved, and they don't want money. They want to feel like they're included, like they're part of a family or something. And if you can learn to give that, you're giving something worth more than money will ever give them. There are people that are emotionally wounded for whatever reason. There's a bazillion reasons out there, and money's not the answer. Now, if somebody's starving to death, obviously money's the answer there. We need to buy them some food. But there are people who have money, they have houses, they have cars, they have all the toys they want, and they don't have the connection we're talking about. They're one of those 47% that say, I have no meaningful relationships. And wouldn't it be foolish to look at them and go, yeah, but look at your house. And man, that's a nice vehicle you're driving. And look at your toys you're playing with, and your TV and your latest computer. And they'd go, you don't get it, do you? I don't have any meaningful relationships in my life. And buying stuff, material stuff, will never, ever, ever, ever fill that place that desires a meaningful relationship. Now, you can have your stuff, but without your stuff, with your stuff and no meaningful relationship, you really got nothing. So it's all way, way more important than just food and clothing. So it's your relationships. Look at your relationships, and they're going to tell you a lot about your relationship with God. Now, this is going to come across a little rough, so I'll try to speak kindly. If you're too busy for your brethren, don't tell me you got time for God. You can go ahead and tell me that lie if you want, but let me tell you, I ain't believing it for a second. Inasmuch as you did it unto one of these, the least my brethren, you did it unto me, he said. You're distant from the brethren? Oh, I just don't get close to anybody. Well, how are you going to get close to God if you're not close to God's family? And we used to say about people who didn't want to come to church, said, well, if you don't want to assemble with them here, you're not going to assemble with them there. If you're distant from them here, how are you going to be close with God's family up there? Well, it's just going to be different up there. Okay, show me that in the Bible. I'll give it a shot. But if I can't love God's children here, why do I want to be with them forever over there? If we're distant, we just need to be honest with ourselves. We ain't as close to God as we think we are. Disinterested in the brethren? I'm too busy doing what I want to do. I don't think we're that interested in God. Church family, it's more than just a weekly assembly. We do this. This is fun. I like this. I like looking around and seeing the faces, and later on when we're sitting around this afternoon sharing, to go, was so-and-so there? And I'll say, yeah, because they always sit right there. And if you sat in your spot, I know you were here. Now, if you want to mess with me, sit on the other side of the building. I'm not going to know if all the Baxters were here or not because y'all's on a different side of the building today. Now that I pointed you out, I know. But, it's just, this is enjoyable, but this is not the depth I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about, we've got, I'm going to say 90 folks in here. That may be a tad overestimate, but I'm not saying you got to be best friends with everybody in the auditorium. Please don't misunderstand me. But if you don't have a core group where you're really, really connected and you can share tears and life and joy together somewhere Monday through Saturday, then you're not quite getting it. Proverbs 27:17, some of our ladies have a t-shirt that says, as iron sharpens iron. Great t-shirt, because that's part of what we do. We help make each other stronger. And that comes in a dozen different ways that we do it, but that's exactly what we do. As we learn to love one another, and we have this association and this vibration that people can feel, it becomes our witness to other people. Christ would say, I'm giving you a new command, that you love one another just as I've loved you. that you also love one another. By this all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. So if you know the congregations that were together, but they were frozen together, you're like, ooh, that was a cold place. Or a toxic congregation and everything is just nip, 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 nip. You know, they're biting and devouring one another, and they eventually dissipate, of course. That's not what you want. You want that love that we're talking about. And that's the standard. As I have loved you. Ooh. How did Christ love us? Let it soak in. Think about it and go, okay, that's how we're supposed to love other people. And that's not my words. That's Jesus' words. So it's all about that giving. I'm giving. I'm learning to give. It's not about receiving. I'm going to sow my seed. And look, if you sow enough love seed, you're going to get some return here and now. That's just the way life works. But you really want your focus over in heaven, where you're laying up treasures. You really want to keep your focus over there. And so this becomes a really straight and narrow challenge, especially people who grew up in difficult times and really had to scrap and scratch for everything they've got. And this whole sense of self-preservation ingrains itself into them, and it becomes a challenge to learn to give without any expectation of receiving anything back. It's hard because their experience in life taught them something different. And that's okay, because Christianity is about transforming in a whole new way. And so we surrender to God's ways and say, okay, this is the way God set it up. This is the way I'm going to do it. So Acts 20:35, it's more blessed to give than receive. Now that has to move from a verse in your Bible to an experiential thing in your life, to an experience in your life where you have discovered the joy of giving, and you have found that it is better than receiving, and then you're on a new path. God's going to refocus us, because the world says, me, me, me. Well, you know, what do they do in Madison Avenue, the advertising biggies? It's all about you. And not that this is wrong, but remember the old commercial, Burger King, you can have it your way? You know, okay, I want my burger my way. I'm cool with that. But at some point, you got to go, no, I don't get everything my way. But kids are taught that, and society is taught that, and we are just totally dependent from infancy. And you can't help that as an infant, can you? I mean, if somebody doesn't take care of an infant, that baby's going to die. We need somebody there, but there's a transitioning. And I don't know what the numbers are exactly, but from some point you go from total 100% dependence on the adults around you to what I always like to call reasonable independence. And I hedge and I call it reasonable independence because I don't believe you and I are ever totally independent. We are a family. We depend on one another at various times for various reasons. We need one another. But there is that reasonable independence. And then when you learn to be a giver, there's just some freedom. Because if you can truly find your joy in giving, who can ever stop that? Nobody's going to stop that. Your joy is no longer dependent on somebody giving you something, because your joy is in giving your love away. I mean, you just opened up a gate, a highway that's got nobody on it. It's 8 lanes, and you're the only vehicle on it. You got it wide open. So you got to shift from consumer to giver. And that's tough. Christ said it's a straight and narrow way, and it is tough. You live a more selfless life. And I'm telling you, for some people, it's unthinkable. They'll toss you a few crumbs. They'll give you a little bit of something to string you along so they can manipulate and use you. You figure those people out sooner or later. But, you know, it's just tough because it's a dog-eat-dog world. And you got to step on people to get to the top. Isn't that ugly? That's the way the world looks at it. So we want a love that heals and inspires other people. That's what we're training for. Romans 12:10, be devoted to one another in brotherly love, giving preference to one another in honor. And then he said, bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. Galatians 6 passage there is interesting because he does give the opposite of that if you'll look at it on your own time. And then Philippians 2, 3, and 4. Do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility. Consider one another as more important than yourselves. Do not milk out merely only for your own personal interest, but also for the interest of others. I saw a meme on my Facebook page this morning because I like to do a little, I don't know, some people call it doom scrolling. I think that's a really long time scrolling. But it says, every person you meet is somebody God loved enough to let Jesus die for. And oh, that's an interesting perspective, isn't it? So nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but everybody is more important than yourself, which is interesting because Zig Ziglar, way back a long time ago, motivational speaker, said everybody is your superior in something. Everybody in this auditorium knows more about something than you do. Now, I don't know exactly what it is. Now, some of you I know. Chris knows way more about electricity than I know. Archer knows more about turkey hunting than I know. Dave's got mechanics way past what I know. You know, I can pick out a few of you, but it's not just those specific areas. There are people got a lot more knowledge and a lot more experience in things I don't. And what's the old saying? How many heads are better than one? Two. And we got, let's say, 75 or 100 heads. We ought to be doing pretty good. So what we have in our church family is we become a place of encouragement. We're lifting each other up other than tearing each other down. It's not about a competition. It's correction, absolutely. We need correction from time to time, but there's a difference between that and condemnation. And you know it when you receive it. It's a different feel. It's a little hard to articulate. There's inspiring somebody, lifting them up, and then there's competing with somebody. Now, if you're playing checkers, competition is okay, but beyond that, be careful. Galatians 6:1, brothers and sisters, if a person is caught in any wrongdoing, you who are spiritual are to restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness. That's our encouragement. And look at that, spirit of gentleness. Now, if you're not in a gentle mood when the event happens, walk away and say, we'll talk about this later when I'm in a better mood. Better to postpone something a tad than to have to destroy it and really clean up a mess. So we seek and save the lost. That's what we're here for. It's all training. We're a hospital for the spiritually ill, and we're trying to get them better. And some people don't want to get better. Now, we're trying to get them better. And sometimes you got to wait a long time and hope they finally wake up and go, I need to do better. I don't know when that thing clicks. I think all of us know stories. I know stories of people who got into drugs and stayed in drugs and said, I want to get out. No, they got back into drugs. I'm going to get out. No, they got back into drugs. No, I'm going to get out. And somewhere by the time they got one case, 60-something years old, they finally said, I can't do this no more. I'm going to get out. And they stayed out. When's that change come? Well, rule of thumb is when the pain of staying the same is worse than the pain of change, you will change. When the path of change becomes the path of least resistance, then they'll change. But as long as staying the same in their mind is the path of least resistance, they don't change. And nothing you can do except stay available and understand that one day, and I don't know when that day is, they may go, I can't do this anymore. I get a tickle out of some of the inmates I volunteer around because usually they're hitting 55 to 60, and they'll just look at me. They just call me Chap because they don't even know my name. And I'll have them tell me now and then, when I get out, I ain't coming back. This is too hard the way to live. I can't do this anymore. And I'm like, dude, you think? And then we get behind them and try to make sure they never come back. So love, it's our foundation. That's what you want to build from. This is the love of God with all your heart, all your soul. Love your neighbor as yourself. And then love is that action. We're going to consider one another in order to stir up love and good works. That's really neat. I mean, I think all of us want that. Now, I don't think we want to be stirred up to be manipulated and used, but we do love to be loved and stirred up. Love is our testimony. The way we treat one another, it's going to reverberate, and people will talk about it. If you're mad at this congregation for some reason, and that happens now and then, you got 100 people together, we're going to bump heads. You go to work and talk about how wonderful your church family is, right? If it comes up at work in the break room, it's like them knotheads down there where I go to church. I don't even know if I'm going back, right? But on the same side, on the other side of the coin, when it's working and it's feeling good, and you're so glad you're here, and somebody says, "Where you go to church?" You go, "Let me tell you about it. I got the best bunch of people," and it's our witness, kind of automatic. So we choose to give. Acts 20:35, more blessed to give than to receive. And we aim to heal and inspire folks, because we are a hospital for the spiritually ill. Ask the right questions. This is our last slide, and we'll wind it down. Who will you love this week? This has been, I think it's been a decent lesson. But if all you walk out is with generalities, you got nothing. Who are you going to love this week? Now, you may not have a specific person in mind, but you keep that question in mind, they're going to come across your path, and you're going to recognize them. So, who needs encouragement? Maybe you know somebody needs some encouragement. You can go ahead and give them that encouragement. And I'm talking about love and support and that kind of thing. Who just needs attention? Now, there's so many people starved to death for just attention. I don't even know how to explain it. I'm not a nursing home kind of guy. That's not my place to go, but now and then we'll go. And, when you have a visitor go in, you can't even just go to somebody's room usually without other people wanting a bit of your attention. That's all they want. A little validation that I'm still alive and I still value. I'm still of enough value for you to take 5 minutes and go, "Hey, what's your name? What did you used to do?" And just have a trivial little conversation that uplifts their day that you're going to forget before you get back to Taco Bell to take your lunch break. That's okay. You still made somebody feel better. It's just simple attention is what I'm trying to say. Who needs to know that they matter? Don't just assume it. Let people know. Just with a little kind compliments. And I'm talking about really just in your family, your own little core group. You married? Let your mate know from time to time that he or she matters. Let your kids know that they matter, that you're proud of them. Man, there's some people who live their whole life just waiting for mom or dad to go, "I'm proud of you, son. I'm so proud of you, daughter." And they never, ever, 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 ever hear the words. And they stand by the casket saying goodbye to their loved ones, still never having heard the words, "I'm proud of you." It's just another way of saying you matter. That's all it is. And that's what we learn to do in a church family. And we carry it beyond. So I want you to be the one that loves first. I want you to be the one that gives first. Be the one that serves first. And say, "Well, I want the world to change." Great, me too. Where's it going to start? The old saying, you've got to be the change that you want to see in the world around you. That's all this lesson's really saying. So we're going to prepare to meet God. And that begins with faith, repentance, confession, and baptism. We put Christ on a baptism. We walk the straight and narrow. If you hadn't begun the journey, we're getting ready to sing a song. If you've begun it, you've wandered off, you may not need to come forward. Maybe you feel like you do. Or maybe you just need to call up one of our elders and go, "We need to talk. My spiritual life hasn't been quite what it ought to be. And I'm really ready to make a change. Can you give me some counsel?" If you're subject to our public invitation, let us help. While together, we stand and sing.